Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being charged with murder. It'll make the local news maybe, a few headlines, a trial, and then it fades. Murder feels like a modern problem, a symptom of crowded cities and modern pressures. But it isn't. It's one of the oldest things a human being can do to another human being, and the evidence for it is far older and far stranger than most people realize. In 2015, a team of researchers was studying a nearly complete skeleton pulled from a site called Sima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, in northern Spain. The skeleton belonged to an early human, likely a Homo heidelbergensis, who lived around 430,000 years ago. When the researchers examined the skull using CT scans, they found two fractures on the frontal bone, above the left eye. Both wounds were nearly identical in shape and size. Both were inflicted before death, and the angle and force required to create them ruled out an accident. A fall doesn't produce two matching wounds in the same location. Something or someone hit this person twice in the same spot with the same object. The researchers called it the oldest clearly identified case of interpersonal violence in the human fossil record. Not a hunting accident, not an animal attack, a killing. Here's what makes this so strange. The body wasn't left where it fell. It was found at the bottom of a 43-foot vertical shaft, deep inside a cave system, along with the remains of at least 28 other individuals. No natural way in. No sign that anyone lived down there. Someone, or some group, carried the bodies to the mouth of that shaft and dropped them in again and again for what may have been thousands of years. Whether that counts as the world's oldest funeral or something else is still debated. But it means that 430,000 years ago, humans who weren't even our species were already doing two things at once: killing each other and treating death as something that mattered. That single skull pushes the origin of human violence back further than almost anyone expected. But it also raises the obvious question. Was this rare? Or was it just the first time we happened to find the evidence? To answer that, you have to look at what came after. By around 10,000 years ago, the evidence stops being a single skull and starts becoming a pattern. At a site called Jebel Sahaba along the Nile in Sudan, archaeologists uncovered a cemetery of at least 61 individuals. Originally excavated in the 1960s, the site was re-examined in 2021 using modern imaging. Nearly half the skeletons showed injuries, healed and unhealed, from projectiles. Stone points were still embedded in bone. Some individuals had multiple wounds, front and back, suggesting they were attacked more than once across their lives and eventually killed. Men, women, and children were among the dead. This wasn't one bad night. The mix of healed and fresh wounds suggests a long-running conflict, possibly stretching over generations, between groups competing for land along a narrowing strip of fertile riverbank during a period of dramatic climate change. Jebel Sahaba isn't a story about one murder. It's a story about murder becoming organized, repeated, and generational. And this raises a question that anthropologists have argued about for decades. Is violence something that came from civilization, from farming, property, and hierarchy? Or is it older than all of that, buried in us long before we built anything permanent? Jebel Sahaba suggests the second answer. These people weren't farmers. They were hunter-gatherers, living exactly the kind of lifestyle that some researchers have long imagined as peaceful by necessity, too mobile, too small in number to bother fighting. The evidence says otherwise. But if violence is old, individual murder, the kind driven by rage, jealousy, or personal conflict rather than warfare, might be even harder to find. Warfare leaves mass graves. A single murder leaves one body, and one body is easy to lose to time. That's what makes a discovery from 2023 so unusual. In a rock shelter in Croatia, researchers studying a partial skeleton around 6,000 years old identified a puncture wound in the ribs consistent with a close-range stabbing, not the kind of wound you'd get from a hunting accident or a fall onto rocks. The angle suggested the attacker was facing the victim directly. This wasn't a raid or a battle. It looked personal. Cases like this are rare in the record, not because they didn't happen, but because most murders from prehistory leave nothing behind. A knife wound to soft tissue disappears with the body. A strangulation leaves no mark on bone at all. For every murder we can prove, There are almost certainly hundreds we'll never find, because the evidence rotted away 10,000 years before anyone thought to look for it. Which means the actual history of murder isn't written in the fossil record. It's mostly missing from it. What we have are the rare cases where the killer happened to leave a mark on bone, where the body happened to end up somewhere it could be preserved, and where, thousands of years later, someone happened to dig in exactly the right spot. So why kill it all? Modern researchers studying both the archaeological record and existing hunter-gatherer societies point to a handful of recurring motives that show up again and again across cultures with no contact with each other. Competition over resources during hard times, exactly what likely happened at Jebel Sahaba. Revenge cycles, one killing answered by another, spiraling across years. And disputes over status, mates, or perceived insults, conflicts that look, uncomfortably, a lot like the motives behind modern murders. A long-running study of the Juhuanzi people of the Kalahari, one of the most studied hunter-gatherer populations in the world, found that even in a society with almost no formal hierarchy, homicides still occurred, and the most common trigger wasn't food or land. It was interpersonal conflict between men, often over women, insults, or long-simmering grudges. The society had no police, no courts, no jails. Instead, communities relied on social pressure, exile, or, in the most serious cases, group consensus to kill the killer, essentially prehistoric capital punishment carried out by the community itself. That detail matters because it suggests something uncomfortable. Murder didn't wait for civilization to invent laws to break. If anything, laws, courts, and punishment may have developed specifically because murder was already a persistent enough problem that societies needed a way to contain it. Which brings the story back to that skull in Spain. 2 blows, same spot, 430,000 years old. For a long time, it stood almost alone, a strange outlier that historians weren't sure how to interpret. Was it one desperate act in an otherwise peaceful world? Or was it the earliest surviving trace of something that had already been happening for a very long time, just never preserved? Jebel Sahaba suggests the second answer. So does the Croatian rib. So do the homicide patterns in modern hunter-gatherer societies that have never read a history book and never needed to. The pattern isn't that murder appeared at some point in human development. The pattern is that it was there from the start. Present in a Heidelbergensis skull nearly 500,000 years old, present in a hunter-gatherer cemetery 10,000 years old, present in a stabbing 6,000 years old, and present, unfortunately, in the news tonight. What's changed isn't the impulse. It's what we built around it. Laws, courts, punishment, ways of containing something that apparently needed containing long before any of those things existed. The tools changed. The motives, competition, revenge, jealousy, betrayal, mostly haven't. Every time a headline reports a murder, it's echoing something that goes back further than agriculture, further than villages, further than our own species. Somewhere in a cave in Spain, 500,000 years ago, someone raised something heavy and swung it twice in the same place on purpose. We don't know their name. We don't know why. But we know exactly what it was because we still call it the same thing today. If you want to dig deeper into any of this, all the research is linked down in the description.